picture basically opens with Lara going through a training session with this droid. We went through a great deal of pre-vis animation trying to give it character. And because the thing's multi-armed, it's got basically 6 appendages. It went through a spider version, a gymnast version. We inserted some of that into the action. In fact, he does a really cool backflip in the movie where she's run past him. He then leaps up onto a pillar and does a backflip ending up on top of her. He basically exists in 2 versions. One is a fully synthetic CG character, but he also exists in the real world as a posable prop. That was used primarily for shots where it was immobile and it gave her something to react to.
We built a full-size droid. The way the progression went was they pretty much designed it on computer. You know, the pre-visualisation guys got together with the director, with the production designer Kirk, came up with what they wanted it to look like, and then gave us sort of conceptual drawings of it. And then we made a full-size one of it.
But any time it moves and jumps around, it's the CG version.
Stop!
A shot like this is about 80 frames long, about 3 days. But it all depends really how much the robot's moving in shot. Okay, first of all we get the clean plate, the director shoots, and a as-is beauty pass. We're able to key that straight on, and then we're able to grade it and depth it with various mats that 3D give us, along with lots of other layers that they supply. Separation passes for each limb, and various other bits and bobs are able to grade and treat each individual limb. And then various stages of putting it together to grade it to fit the background. It's a mat for his volumetrics, and a mat for his separation shadows. Various highlight passes, which we're able to key directly over the top again, so that all the lights on the robot itself sit into the shot. Finally, a live action element, which we can put over the top, so that when it cuts with the live action robot in the next shot, it all sits in, so the final shot looks like that.
We went to a great deal of effort to make sure that the 2 tied up together. It was also particularly tricky in that the environment was very smoky and what have you, and we had to make sure that he sat in appropriately. You know, he didn't look like he was added onto the shots. I think we sort of broke new ground with that robot. I mean, there's been a lot of really impressive robots recently, CG robots in recent movies, but I think this one just was that little bit better. And I think we achieved a level of reality and scariness with this character that I hadn't seen in other films before.
They built the clock physically. There was a 3-dimensional clock that was used in the shooting of the film. But what they hadn't created was the insides, the inner workings of the clock, and how would that be. So we worked on the idea of making these sort of magical cogs and springs and how it would actually look sort of suspended in time.
For this particular shot, the clock had to explode and all the internal components had to animate in suspended animation. The recognisable parts had to be there, and then we had to fill it out with lots of small, detailed parts. First, we went up to the set and took pictures of the large-scale clock. Then we brought these pictures into the computer and used that to draw around and get the correct proportions. This is the CG objects which are rendered. The background, Lara Croft. Then we have the crystal, which is an important part of the story here. And she puts her hand up and picks it up. And we also create some interaction with the objects as she puts her hand into the space.
And it's been quite exciting. So it looks pretty cool.
Lara uses the mysterious power that this triangular artifact has in order to go back in time and stop the killing of her boyfriend Alex. So we see her emerge from a fourth dimension into this slowed down past, where we see the knife slowly on its way towards Alex, having been thrown by Powell, the villain. She then approaches the knife. She's the only one who's existing faster than real time. She then physically goes up to the knife and turns the thing back on a trajectory towards Powell, the villain of the piece who'd thrown the knife. The time-slowing device then snaps back into real time, and the knife hits Powell, disabling him so they can leave the tomb. We did it by physically having a knife on set attached to a green-screened, green-painted rod. That was then digitally removed. It allowed Angelina to have something physically to wrestle with. A CG knife was then used to actually plunge into Powell.
No.
As an offshoot of the mechanism, the time effect mechanism of the orrery, we have these little fractures in time, these time glitches, and they're basically three-dimensional, 3-foot floating clouds of plasma that serenely float around the tomb. However, when something physical interacts with them, they reveal a much more malevolent sort of character.
One of the sequences, the husky dog sequence, calls for a dog to enter their time glitch, enter a time storm, and be whittled back down to bone, blood and gore. And then it travels through the time storm out the other side and is untouched. Ended up shooting the husky dog against blue screen so that we could take it off that blue screen environment and place it anywhere. And we digitally, three-dimensionally rotoed the dog and built up muscle tissue and dog skeleton and tracked it to the live action.
So time storms, these started with conceptual discussions with Simon West, the director, and from that we put together this image, which is a basic design which represents the concept of when the time storm is alive, something has touched it. In particular, we're going to talk about the dog sequence. This is a sequence when the dog jumps through one of these things. The dog sees one of them, jumps into it, it ignites, and inside the time storm the fur is stripped away from the dog, but his inertia carries him through and he comes out unscathed. We start with an offline, which is basically just timing out the dog sequence with the other principal photography plates. And from that we develop an animatic, including the computer-generated elements. Close up with the dog. You start with your backplate, which is shot on the orrery set. We have a dog which is shot on blue screen. We suppress the blue from the dog, put the dog over black, and extract a matte. And from this, a CG dog was assembled. That's the dog with the muscle texture, and a skeleton dog. And these elements are combined to produce the final result.
And the sequence looks pretty gnarly.
Holy shit.
The major set piece, action-wise and effects-wise, visual effects-wise in the film is this battle in the Angkor tomb with all the stone statues and characters that come to life. Powell, the bad guy, activates this centuries-old mechanism which unleashes this mercurial life form in the tomb, which wends its way towards these statues and systematically brings them all to life. The first ones that we encounter are these 6'4" humanoid stone monkey characters. And I went to a great deal of effort to make sure that they look very plausible, very convincing, and that they look like they're actually in the environment.
The shape was given by production because that was part of the set, and that was designed by production. From that, we had a perfect copy of the statues in digital world. But then the way they move was up to us. The next step consists of actually putting skeleton bones in a creature. Once you've got a creature which is able to move, just like an animatronic, really. You can pose it, animate it, light it, and render it, and it gets composited on the background.
When the stone characters came to life, I felt very strongly that they should break and fissure and crack at the joints. They didn't actually have a rubberized feel about them. Rather than going at 100% CG route with all that, I made a great deal of effort to shoot real elements, dust and cobwebs, that would be later superimposed on top of these characters.
I think to make any shot successful, you've always got to sit the CG into the plate and then try and join the plate with it. And we shot lots of practical elements with Steve Begg, the effects supervisor. All of those elements have been used to blend the two images together.
I had considered at one point that we have stand-ins of stuntmen standing in wearing green costumes that would give Lara and the other characters something to actually physically refer to. But that actually would have limited the animation approach that I had in mind.
There's two situations really. There's some situation where the actors are interacting closely with the monkeys. So we had a kind of stand with some lights on it, so the actor could look in the eyes of the monkey without having the monkey. And that was quite useful because, straight away it makes it work.
Went to a great deal of effort to make sure that this looked totally believable. Originally, the concept was once Lara beats Powell up, she throws him into a time storm, and then he's basically carried into another tomb via the time storm, where he becomes entombed into the rock.
The time storms are sort of time portals, areas where time is bizarre, where it's turned inside out. And anything that interacts with these time storms, comes to a sticky end.
Powell becomes petrified. That was a miniature that we shot with little 3D characters and what have you in it. And we actually leave Powell's face and do have powers of 10 pull back from him as he turns into rock. And he becomes one of the souls that are lost in this tomb. I'm a big fan of miniatures, and I think used in conjunction with digital effects, you can get levels of reality that you just would have to work at with pure CG. The Brahmin character is basically the climatic part of the sequence. Our villains basically leave the tomb, and they know something else is going to happen. Lara, of course, is slightly oblivious to this. She's standing in front of this character, and he slowly comes to life behind her.
Obviously, it has to be pretty imposing, pretty scary, and definitely convincing that this thing is towering over Angelina.
Because it exists on set already, the look in that sense is already described.
What we needed to do was recreate the Brahmin from the set in CG, totally. So in order to do that, you need to go out onto set, take photographs, take textures, take measurements, and bring that all back for the guys to replicate it.
It's quite complicated and sort of quite interesting from a 3D standpoint, because it's a character which starts off as a real object and has to sort of, because it's made out of stone, it breaks itself into a real character. So it's quite a challenge for us. Somehow we've got to get a transition where it actually breaks itself apart and we see the stone crumbling, and so it frees itself up enough to be able to move. We basically, by hand, have to go through and sketch out on the Brahmin guidelines where we need to break it. So the animators sort of play with the character for a while, try and work out which bits they need to be removed and which bits of stone need to be cracked so that it can actually achieve the movement that we need to get, and then we have to go for it and painstakingly chop it up into hundreds and hundreds of bits. And his face animates as well, so then we have to go into even more detail and break his face up into, give him enough pieces so they can actually move to make shapes and give expression. This is the first time he sort of fully stands, so at this point we've broken away enough of him to allow him to move, and he actually steps down from the podium and she realises that he is going to come after her. And from within all those cracks we're getting dust and bits of stone crumbling out all the time.
We did have the option of putting dust gags, dust effects actually physically on the set that we would imply were basically being caused by the footfalls and the motion. But I opted to go for a post effect with that, a very complicated effects element shoot that we would use to layer on top of this character to make him look like he was really 25 tons of statue coming to life. We had loads of dust and rocks and bits and pieces falling off him, all shot real world, but added on top of the CG character. So as with the Stone Monkeys, we got a level of, I think, reality that you could do with CG, but funnily enough, we did have the option. And also I thought, if you can do something for real, do it for real. Try and imply that there was a 5,000-year-old intelligence within him, and we tried to get that across in these moves, and that there was a definite function in what he was doing. He was slowly stalking her, he was manoeuvring himself in this position to actually, get to her. And then when he uses this magical force to summon these swords, we thought that we're basically building up towards a climax where he ultimately throws the swords towards her. These griffin characters or statues are coming to life. These are gorilla-shaped characters with wings, and they're much more dynamic in their movements than the monkeys, and they're very sort of athletic in their moves.
In order to make the stuntmen react in a real physical way, the black box was dragged through the set. It was built to be the same shape, roughly, as the griffin, so that the stuntmen reacted to a similar sized object. And then we removed the black box. Here we can see the same frame, but with the griffin in place, with the soldiers reacting now to the griffin rather than the box.
We made a great deal of effort to give them a different character from the Stone Monkeys. The griffin characters were very dynamic and they had a definite function, and that was basically to get and stop Lara.
This is one of the final encore shots where Lara shoots one of the griffins. And here's some of the elements that we used to put it together. This is a background plate without anything there. The 3D CG elements. This is some of the bullet hits, the elements we put on top. And finally some mats. We replaced the hands and the gun for the final shot.
We had a lot of fun blowing living daylights out of these characters. I think our animators did a good job in getting across the dynamism of this character. And I was very pleased with the way that they came out.